So you can see from what's behind me that we're going to talk about doubt. And the reason I think we're meant to be looking at this is, at the moment, the world appears in crisis. A lot of uncertainty, which can lead many to cry, where is God? How can he let it happen? And even, there can't be a God. There's so much horror going on. But what is doubt? The word doubt comes from the Latin dubitare and has its roots in the word for two, literally like being in two minds. It is about truth and trust. Can God be trusted? Can the Bible be trusted? And how can we be sure? We can be literally in two minds as to what to believe. And this doubt about God can happen to anyone. Indeed, several key figures in the Bible experienced doubts, and it actually appears very early in Genesis, when Abram and Sarah cannot believe they will have the child God promised. They're old. It doesn't happen like that. But true to his word, God gives them Isaac. In Exodus, Moses, when God tells him he is the one to lead God's people out of Egypt and slavery, he doubts, I can't be the right man. But he obeys God, and he does achieve it. I could go on and on and on, but I'm sure you've got lunch. So just let's look at two more to give us a better understanding. One Old Testament and one New. In the Old Testament, Asaph was a Levite who David had appointed to be a musician. Several of the Psalms are said to be written by him, including Psalm 73, and some verses from it explain his doubts. Truly, God is good to Israel, to those who are pure in heart. But as for me, my feet have almost stumbled, my steps had nearly slipped. For I was envious of the arrogant when I saw the prosperity of the wicked. They're not in trouble as others are. They're not stricken like the rest of mankind. Therefore, pride is their necklace. Violence covers them as a garment. They set their mouths against the heavens, and their tongue struts through the earth. Therefore, his people turn back to them and find no fault in them. And they say, how can God know? Is there knowledge in the Most High? But when I thought how to understand this, it seemed to me a wearisome task, until I went into the sanctuary of God. Then I discerned their end. When my soul was embittered, when I was pricked in heart, I was brutish and ignorant. I was like a beast towards you. Nevertheless, I am continually with you, because you hold my right hand. You guide me with your counsel, and afterwards you will receive me in glory. Whom have I got but you? There is nothing on earth that I desire besides you. But for me, it is good to be near God. I have made the Lord God my refuge, that I may tell of all your works. So we see here that Asaph had allowed his envy to cause doubts in his mind as to the value of serving God, as it appeared the wicked had more than he had. But he did not let that doubt fester and cause him to lose faith. Instead, he turned to God and poured out his troubled thoughts honestly, open to what God would say to him. And he realized that God was sufficient for him. He was strengthened, his doubt helping him to grow in his faith. In the New Testament, the most famous doubter of all, doubting Thomas. We hear his story in John 20. Now Thomas, one of the 12, called the twin, was not with them when Jesus came. So the other disciples said to him, "We have seen the Lord." But he said to them, "Unless I see in his hands the mark of the nails, and place my finger into the mark of the nails, and place my hands into his side, I will never believe." 8 days later, his disciples were inside again, and Thomas was with them. Although the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here, and see my hands, and put out your hand and place it in my side. Do not disbelieve, but believe." Thomas answered him, "My Lord and my God." Jesus said to him, "Have you believed because you have seen me? Blessed are those who have not yet seen and yet have believed." Thomas had not been with the other disciples when they had seen Jesus after the resurrection. And despite having been with Jesus during the 3 years of his ministry, he could only think of the last time he had seen Jesus. He had seen him die. How could he be alive? Easy for the other disciples, very difficult for Thomas. And I wonder, which camp would I have been in? Then. But Thomas must have wanted to believe, because he stayed those 8 days trying to work out his doubts. And then Jesus appeared specifically to him. He's not shamed or criticised for his doubts, but challenged. He overcame his doubt, but this is after he had seen Jesus with his own eyes. But Jesus said, "Have you believed because you have seen me? Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed." What an encouragement for future Christians. Time and time again, Jesus can be seen as being ultimately gracious with those who doubt, but will always remind the person that faith is required. In Matthew 14, there is a story of Peter, the same Peter who went on to become one of the most significant figures in Christianity. And in the fourth watch of the night, he came to them walking on the sea. This is Jesus. But the disciples saw him walking on the sea. They were terrified and said, "It's a ghost!" And they cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them and saying, "Take heart, it is me. Do not be afraid." And Peter answered him, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." So he said, "Come." Peter got out of the boat and walked on the water and came to Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me." Jesus immediately reached out his hand and took hold of him, saying, "O ye of little faith, why did you doubt?" But he took hold of his hand before he said that. A look through history can also show us that the people we consider amazing men and women of faith also had their doubts. Charles Spurgeon referenced doubt in some of his sermons, although he always ended them with hope. The lesson of wisdom is, "Be not dismayed by soul trouble, cast not away your confidence, for it hath great recompense of reward. The Lord does not forsake his saints." Mother Teresa, in a book of letters printed after her death, her struggle was revealed. She frequently wrote of doubts about her own faith. "Darkness is such a place I do not see, neither with my mind nor with my reason. The place of God in my soul is blank. There is no God in me." Another time she wrote, "I spoke as if my very heart was in love with God, tender personal love. If you were there, you would have said, "What hypocrisy," knowing how he is not in my heart at all times. But through all of this, she maintained her devotion to her calling. She's remembered for it. But the letters show us a more human side, one perhaps we can more relate to. But these letters were not published until after her death. Was she concerned if these doubts had been known earlier, the world would think less of her? Anyone who has doubts is not betraying their faith, but raising questions about it. We see from these examples, both inside the Bible and in today's world, it is natural. However, all too often we can think it's a bad thing not to be admitted or shared. We can think of doubt as the enemy of faith and try and hide it. Doubt can also be lack of belief in God's power. In Mark 9:14-24, we read of the man bringing his child to Jesus for healing. Jesus asked them, "What are you arguing?" And what are they arguing about with them? And someone from the crowd answered him, "Teacher, I brought my son to you, for he has a spirit that makes him mute. And whenever it seizes him, it throws him down. And he foams and grinds his teeth and becomes rigid. So I asked your disciples to cast it out, and they weren't able." And he answered them, "O faithless generation, how long am I to be with you? How long am I to bear with you? Bring him to me." And they brought the boy to him. And when the spirit saw him, immediately it convulsed the boy, and he fell on the ground and rolled about. And Jesus asked his father, "How long has this been happening to him?" And he said, "From childhood. And it has often cast him into fire and into water to destroy him. But if you can do anything, have compassion on us and help us." And Jesus said to him, "If you can, all things are possible for one who believes." Immediately the father of the child cried out and said, "I believe. Help my unbelief." So this passage really is all about faith and doubt. Man admits he has some faith, but he needs more. At this time he's faced with something that seems to be overpowering his faith, but he cries out, "I believe. Help my unbelief." It's a admission that his and probably our faith is far from perfect. He and we, in some moments, don't seem to have enough faith to follow him. So what can we do? We can ask for more faith, as this man did. It is an acknowledgement that even faith comes from God. It is his work in our lives that enables us to believe and obey. Yet this passage also causes doubt through the misreading of verse 23. And Jesus said to him, "If you can, all things are possible for one who believes." But this is clarified in 1 John 5, verse 14. And this is the confidence that we have towards him, that if we ask anything according to his will, he hears us. Such a difficult thing to take hold of, that God knows better than us, folks. His will is perfect, and sometimes ours isn't. So why am I speaking about this today? We've talked about people in the Bible and famous Christians who've had their doubts, and it shows that if we do, we are in good company. John talked last week about his encounters with God, and for some, even that does not stop some periods of doubt. I had a personal experience of Jesus many, many years ago, but since that time, I've had periods of doubt. It's nothing to be ashamed of or hidden. Jude 1 verse 22 says, "Have mercy on those who doubt." When I was looking at these passages and what I should say, I came across a couple of quotes. Doubt is sometimes a pain too lonely to know that faith is its twin brother. We can sometimes be so consumed by our doubt that we forget where our faith comes from. It comes from God, and it's to Him we need to go. It can also help our faith grow and increase our understanding, but only if we confront it head on, seeking and absolutely finding answers. But how? By coming to God in prayer, seeking Him and His truths, asking for help, or by speaking to another Christian who can encourage us and share wisdom. Don't suffer alone. Don't let your doubts fester, because that can eventually lead to unbelief. Another quote: faith is grown not by the removal of doubt, but by acting on it. Doubt is not the end of the faith or its betrayal. We as Christians are encouraged to simply believe, but not to believe simply. As the theologian Augustine said, a Christian thinks in believing and believes in thinking. Oh, sniff. No, that's all right. Almost finished, you'll be pleased to know. Working through and resolving doubts can strengthen us in our faith. It is like refining a metal by burning off the impurities. Then sometimes this strengthened and deepened faith can benefit others who are experiencing doubt. In 1 Peter 3 it says, "But in your hearts honour Christ the Lord as holy, always being prepared to make a defence to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you, yet do it with gentleness and respect." This is Peter speaking, the one whose doubt we heard about earlier, worried that he would sink. His faith had been strengthened, and he knew that these doubts encountered by so many others enable Christians to be able to answer queries with honesty and empathy. So this message is for all of us. Those who have had or are currently going through doubts, or those who have never had doubts, but can have mercy and encouragement for doubters. We're on this journey together to share each other's ups and downs.